What's up, ladies and gents? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Francisco. Let's get right back into it. This is part 3, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Road to Rebirth miniseries. Today, we're going to be covering the events of the game from Wall Market all the way up to the Underground Shinra test site. We've got a lot to cover today, and of course, some more theories to talk about. So without further ado, let's get started. Picking up right where we left off at the end of episode 2, we've got Aerith and Cloud here going after Tifa, trying to figure out where in the world she's headed, looking so darn good. All right, I mean, look, let's not kid ourselves here, okay? She's smashing in this like violet colored dress. It's really unlike her to dress like this, but there's a reason for it, right? So she's headed over to Wall Market, and Cloud's perfectly okay with just letting her go, going back to Seventh Heaven Bar. And Aerith is like, no, listen, buddy, you're gonna go take care of your friend because she's obviously about to get herself into a situation that she's not even prepared to deal with. To which Cloud responds basically like, have you seen this girl? She can throw hands. So, but anyways, after some persuasion, of course, we take Aerith's advice and we head after Tifa, and we make our first contact, if you will, with Wall Market. Now, the Wall Market section of the game is a little peculiar because there's not really a whole lot of anything major as far as the progression of the story is concerned. It happens here. I often look at this segment as more of a comedic relief, right? We got a couple of zany, weird, wild little things that happen in this part of the game. But in short, we have to get into an audition for Don Corneo, because Don Corneo hosts these auditions every so often where he picks his, I guess, next to be wife. I don't really know what the deal is. But in order for us to get an audition, we have to be approved. We have to get approval from one of the members of the trio. Of course, in doing so, in trying to get approval, we are engaged in some rather interesting activities. We get an erotic hand massage at some point in this whole thing. We dance and through a very somewhat pretty fun little mini game that the game has to offer here, and you fight a house. You heard me correctly. You fight a motherfucking house in the Coliseum. All right. After we do all that, we get all prettied up, and boom, we're in. Once we've made our way into the audition with Don Corneo, we meet up with Tifa, and it turns out that the whole reason she's even here to begin with is that some of Don Corneo's men showed up at Sector 7. They were asking questions about Avalanche. And Tifa, of course, had to get to the bottom of it, understand why in the world this person, of all people, has any sort of interest in Avalanche, because there's no dealings between Avalanche and Don Corneo. They're completely separate entities, and they're not related with one another whatsoever. So the audition proceeds, and obviously we go through some very corny, cringy dialogue from Don Corneo, because Don Corneo is a pig, y'all. Like, he's straight up, he's just a deplorable human being. But, they talk to him, they finally get the information out of him, and the one singular major revelation in this part of the game is that the whole reason Don Corneo was asking about Avalanche and had sent his people over to Sector 7 is because, of course, Shinra told him to do so, and we end up finding out that there's this plan or this plot to basically...
Since Avalanche blew up 2 reactors, Shinra's decided they ought to stamp them out, home base and all. And I mean... stamp out by targeting the support pillar and blowing it up.
Destroy the support pillar in Sector 7 and bring the plate from above crashing down and destroying the entire sector altogether. As soon as this is revealed, shortly afterwards, he springs a trapdoor, and basically the 3, Tifa, Aerith, and Cloud, fall to the sewers below. We have a boss fight that happens here. Now, this is an interesting boss because the first time that I played Final Fantasy VII Remake when it originally came out, this boss fight gave me a good bit of trouble. He literally kicked my ass time and time again. It took me several attempts to beat him, but this time around, it was a lot easier. I was better prepared. I already knew what was going to happen, so naturally the fight was a lot easier, but still a pretty fun boss fight. So far, nothing to complain about here, and every boss fight up until this point so far has been pretty solid, but we beat the boss, and then all of a sudden we have to go through the sewer section of the game. As we're making our way through the sewers, there's an obvious sense of urgency. Tifa is not necessarily convinced that Don Corneo was telling the truth, but then she's also not really convinced that he was lying. The whole party is kind of like, he may have lied, and we wouldn't put it past him that he's lying about this, but at the same time, if he was telling the truth, then we need to get back to Sector 7 ASAP because they are definitely going to need our support. Outside of some, shenanigan fights here and a couple of boxes and chests to find and a couple of like hallways to really explore, there's really nothing outstanding about the sewer section of the game. It's just another area to explore and to grind in and just to get from point A to point B. But there is one conversation that does happen that I want to highlight right now. And in this conversation, we see some further evidence that our Aerith already knows how the events of this storyline are going to transpire, or better said, she already knows how the events of the original game played out.
Damn it. I can't stop thinking about what Corneo said.
I know. Me too.
It's gotta be a trick. There's no way they'd go that far. But what if Corneo really was telling the truth? We have to get there in time to stop it. We have to.
Right.
Aerith, what are you not telling me?
Huh?
You see this like hesitation and expression on Aerith's face before she answers her that is kind of a telling sign that she knows exactly that what's about to happen. She knows this plate's coming down. She knows that Sector 7's about to get destroyed. But of course, Aerith being like the sweetest character in all of video games, doesn't do anything to really, paint that much of a depressing picture. She instead opts to be more supportive and optimistic about the whole situation, and the three move on and get out of the sewers at the very end of it all. After successfully getting out of the sewers, we arrive at the train graveyard. We play through this section. It's nothing really significant that happens here, just another spot of filler. I honestly feel like the sewer section could have been a little shorter, and I really feel like the train graveyard could have also been shorter. There's nothing really, again, significant that these two sections contribute to the overall narrative of the game. But basically, if you really want to know, the train graveyard is haunted by ghosts. There's the bad ghost, the mean ghost, and there's just one like friendly ghost. We can call him Casper if you want, friendly neighborhood ghost, whatever, blah blah blah. And we get through this section. We have this boss fight in the warehouse. This boss fight was a little annoying, but nothing like unbearable. It just had a couple of annoying mechanics where he spawns these like traveling bursts of flames that kind of hone on your character, and if they hit you, they blow you up. You become like, for lack of a better term, you become stun locked, and at some points I would like get hit by one, finally recover, only to get hit by another one and end up being killed in the process. So I had to use a Phoenix down to revive, blah blah. Again, the fight's not like the most spectacular thing in the world. It's also not the most annoying one. One of the most annoying fights in the game is actually about to come up here in just a few minutes, but we finally beat the boss. We get out of the warehouse, and as we exit the warehouse, we do see off in the distance the pillar at Sector 7, and if you look closely, you're going to see some explosions and possible gunfire flashing going on, already showing us that the shit has gone down at the Sector 7 pillar, and we need to hurry up. We make our way through the rest of the graveyard area, and before we're able to actually leave, the main baddie of the graveyard shows up. Now, this is what I believe to be the ghost or the spirit or the being, the entity responsible for the graveyard being haunted. There's a brief cutscene right before this that kind of explains the curse of the graveyard, right? And how, like, if you get swept away by the black wind, I think it's called, you're stuck in a train graveyard forever. This black wind, I think, manifests itself as this chariot-style boss that we fight here. Now, this boss fight, this motherfucker right here, let me tell you something. As far as the aesthetic design of the boss fight's concerned, this is a pretty dope-looking boss, but when it comes to the mechanics, this boss fight is a piece of shit. He was annoying. Physical damage doesn't do a whole lot of damage, and, magic is kind of the way to go, but he moves around a lot. He moves very quickly. And there's a lot to really slow down the party's ability to do good chunks of damage at a time up until you finally stagger him and up until you can actually start doing damage to his wheels. Once you're able to stagger him one time and do damage to the wheels, it becomes pretty easy at that point, but it takes a while to get to that point. But either way, this is probably the first boss fight in the game where I'm thinking to myself, Jesus, this is a little annoying, but it wasn't terrible. Okay, so we finished the boss fight, and up to this point, nothing really major has happened. Now, outside of the revelation that Shinra has this plan to basically destroy Sector 7, nothing else has happened since then that's really important to the narrative or to the plot. Again, outside of the Sector 7 plan and outside of that one brief conversation where we can kind of infer that Aerith already knows what's about to happen. So as soon as we're done with this boss fight, we make our way through the rest of the graveyard and we finally arrive at Sector 7. And this shit has hit the fan. It is going down. And of course, you know, we're there, we're on time, we're ready to rock and roll, we're ready to save the day, but those damn spirits show up and they do a phenomenal job of slowing down Tifa, Cloud, and Aerith, which I want to talk about here for just a little bit. It is interesting that these spirits showed up at the time and at the moment that they did. And Hung, obviously, you know, it's a little fight where you have to fight. I think it's called the enigmatic one, the enigmatic spirit, whatever they're called. And it's just long enough to delay our arrival by just a matter of minutes. And it makes me wonder, if these spirits hadn't shown up and if we had been able to get to the pillar sooner, what kind of an impact would that have had on how the events at this pillar transpired, right? And you'll understand what I mean as we start getting into the pillar here right now. Once we arrive to the actual pillar, things are not going well at all for Avalanche and in the resistance over here. You know, Shinra's already here at the pillars. They're putting up a really good fight. We got choppers all over the place. Choppers gunning people down. People trying to gun down the choppers. It's an absolute mess. It's a bloodbath. It's chaotic. All right. And you can hear them at some point in the choppers, I guess on some sort of a megaphone or a PA system, whatever it is, calling out saying that they are not going to allow Avalanche to destroy the pillar. And so if you recall in video number 2, I explained how and why Shinra destroyed its own reactors. And, you know, it's to basically instigate another war with Wutai, right? And if for second video, Heidegger refers to Avalanche as allies of Wutai, and they're, you know, turning public opinion against Avalanche to the point where you can see in one of the news broadcasts that, you know, the public is against Avalanche. They're asking for no more bombings, no more killing, and all this kind of stuff. And once again here, as they are literally in their home base, for lack of a better term, they are putting it out loud saying, hey, this is Avalanche's plan. We're here to stop them. We're Shinra. We're here to protect you. We want to stop them. Avalanche are the ones who are trying to destroy the pillar and bring the plate down on top of all of you, which is, you know, again, very smart from the perspective of trying to gain public opinion, gain public favor to then, you know, be able to go on and justify whatever war we may or may not see in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. But from a moral perspective, it's absolutely terrible because they're going to kill a lot of people right now in just a couple of minutes. Now, as I said, you know, everything going down at the pillar, it's not going in Avalanche's favor at all. And here is where we experience in this video some major deviations from the original plot line versus the remake's plot line. Both Biggs and Jesse die, supposedly, during the plate incident here. And Wedge is able to somehow survive as we progress further into the game. You're going to see why and how he survives. But Biggs and Jesse both died. In the original game, all three of them died in this incident. So we got some pretty major changes here already, and I'm interested and curious to see how this is going to pan out. And even at the end of Remake, there's a subtle, well, not a subtle, but it's a very direct hint that one of the two that did die in front of us supposedly actually ended up surviving. You know, we're playing as Cloud in this section. We're making our way up the pillar, you know, fighting waves of Shinra robots and Shinra soldiers. And then we finally get to the very top. But holy crap, I totally forgot to cover a section that I had written off to the side margin of my page here in my outline. So let's talk about that now. When we arrive to Sector 7, the party splits up.
Heaven, I need you to
Get Marlene to safety, right? It's okay. I'll find her.
And Aerith is charged with going to 7th Heaven and finding Marlene. Right, because, you know, the plate's about to come down. It's gonna happen. Like, they're not gonna stop them. They kind of already got the idea, like, we're probably not gonna stop them from doing this. We need to get everybody out of here and save as many people as we possibly can. So Tifa asks Aerith, please go to 7th Heaven, please go save Marlene. So we play as Aerith for a little while. We make our way through the slums and we get to the bar and we find Marlene. There's a very nice conversation that happens between the two, and something that I cannot explain happened here. And I'm hoping that one or many of you can explain or give me your opinions on what happened here. But Marlene at one point gives Aerith a hug at the bar because, you know, she's terrified. She's a scared little girl. She's worried about her dad. You know, a whole bunch of stuff is going on. So she hugs her, and we get that same exact noise and somewhat of a visual distortion on the screen that Cloud gets when he gets these flashbacks, right? And it happens to her when she touches Aerith, and Aerith just holds her finger up to her lips, kind of like signifying like, shh, you know, don't say anything. It's just between us. Marlene, of course, being a young, naive child, agrees, and they make their way to their front door. As they arrive to their front door, they are met by Sung. Now, let me tell you something. Sung, his name is spelled T-S-E-N-G. I always thought that it was Sang, and I literally always said Sang up until now, up until last night when I first played through the section, or when I played through the section again and heard his name being pronounced as Sung. Sung and Aerith have a very brief conversation, and basically it looks like Aerith agrees to be taken by Sung, but she has a deal that she wants to strike with him in order for her to go with him willingly, and the willingly part here is very, very important. Now, back to the pillar. When we arrive at the top, we had to fight Reno. Reno shows up on his chopper. He's got Rude right next to him. Reno comes down. He goes all the way to the computer at the end of the pillar structure and basically starts activating the process to disengage the plate, to blow it up, to drop it down. And we have the boss fight that we had in the original game, now here in Final Fantasy VII Remake. And I'm going to take this opportunity to go on a bit of a rant. Okay, this boss fight is fucking annoying. All right, and it's an annoying boss fight, and I noticed that this game has several instances of this going on, which doesn't really, you know, break my enjoyment of the game, but it is a little annoying. I think that because this game was once a turn-based game and is now an action RPG for lack of a better term, they had to employ certain attacks that basically kind of stun lock you. So Reno has an attack in this fight where he launches you up into the air. You can't get out of it. You can't do anything about it. You just get launched up, you get hit, he slams back down, and then he slams back down again and just does a shit ton of damage. And the boss fight overall is absolutely annoying this time around. I remember playing the original, the several times that I actually played through it, this boss fight was one that I found to be enjoyable. Even with the whole diamond prism, like cage prison thing that they would cast on you, it was a lot more manageable then, but in this time around, it's a little bit harder to manage because you've got Reno for the first half of the boss fight, and you've got Rude who joins him in on the second half of the boss fight, along with the prison mine that gets you trapped in there. You got to basically target it down and destroy it so that you can free up the party member that's trapped inside. Thankfully, Aerith is the one I usually use to heal because she has the highest magic stat. She was never caught in the prism, but Cloud did, and that kind of sucked because Cloud is my best DPSer in the whole party right now, obviously. Now, that aside, we beat Reno, we beat Rude, and once again, we try to stop them from dropping the plate. I believe Reno or Rude takes off out to the computer to hit the final button, and I believe Tifa or Barrett, no, Tifa heads up after him. Rude takes off to the computer, and the minute that Cloud and Barry try to join in on the chase, those goddamn spirits show up once more and get in the way and allow Rude the time that he needs to go ahead and press the button, which he does. And of course, this results in the pillar being destroyed, which results in the plate being dropped on Sector 7. Absolutely crazy scenes. You know, the whole thing drops down. There's a really like menacing shot of President Shinra sitting in Shinra Tower looking over the plate as it's lit in fire after it crashed down. And he just has this most evil like look on his face where it basically shows everything's going according to his plan. And he's very happy with the outcome. Very happy with the fact that a whole bunch of people, both on the plate and below the plate, just died because he wants to justify another war with Wutai. Terrible. Absolutely terrible. And I did it again. I forgot to mention this other side note that I had here on the side of my outline. So let's talk about it now. There is a very brief scene, a very brief clip during this whole interaction between the party and Reno and Rude, where we see Sang on the monitor talking to the crew, saying, "Hey, like
nothing. There is nothing you can do now.
You can't do this! Eva! I saw Marlene! Aerith!
Marlene? My Marlene? What did you do with her? Where are you?
I'm at the... Sir, come. Your activities unwittingly brought you into contact with the Ancient, who is now back in our custody where she belongs.
You're not going to stop us. This is already going to happen. Thanks to you, we came back in contact with the Ancient Aerith or something like that. Basically, this is the first time that we hear Aerith being referred to as an ancient, and this is going to play a very big role in the remainder of the story for Final Fantasy VII. Not just Remake, but Remake, Rebirth, and whatever the third title will be called. Outside of both Biggs and Jesse dying and Wedge surviving so far, everything else up to this point in the Pillar incident has gone exactly as it went down in the original events of the original game. Now that Barrett, Tifa, and Cloud are safely away from the wreckage of the Sector 7 slums, we get to see a very, I guess, sad scene from Barrett's perspective, right? So one thing to note here, I was not a really big fan of Barrett's voice actor when the game first released. Like, he sounds great, but I just wasn't sold on him yet performance-wise. But this scene where he's like almost hysterically distraught.
Molly! Biggs! Wedge! Jesse! God damn it! God damn you! God damn you all! Molly.
At the loss of not just his partners, Biggs, Jesse, and Wedge, but also Marlene, because right now he never, I don't think he caught on to the fact that Aerith said on that conversation with saying on a monitor that she had found Marlene. So I don't think he caught on to that. He thinks everyone's dead, and you can hear like the pain and anguish in his voice. And when I played through Remake the first time and I saw this scene, I heard him deliver these lines and his performance, like, oh my God, they actually made an excellent choice in choosing this person to voice act Barrett, because he absolutely kills it right here. And from that moment on, I loved Barrett as voice actor since then. Once Barrett has had a chance to kind of calm down, Cloud steps in. It's like, hey, like, I don't know if you were paying attention, but, you know, it sounds like Aerith may have saved Marlene, and I think I know where she's at. So we decide to go ahead and make our way over to the Sector 5 slums to go to Aerith's house, where Cloud believes that Marlene is at right now. And of course, in the process, this ancient comes up as a topic of conversation. And the minute we start talking about the ancient on the way to Sector 5 slums, Sephiroth shows up once more.
Within my veins flows the blood of ancients. This planet is my birthright.
In this brief conversation with Sephiroth, we don't really get a whole lot of information, but he does make a couple of comments here that I want to highlight. So number one, he talks about the blood of the ancients coursing through him, and that the planet is his birthright. And we'll touch upon that probably either towards the end of the series, if not next video, right? And we get confirmation, and as if we needed confirmation. We didn't need confirmation for this, but we get confirmation that Cloud is the only person at the moment that can see Sephiroth, because there's even a scene here where, you know, you see Sephiroth approaching Cloud, talking to him, and then it shifts over to Tifa's perspective, and it looks like Cloud's just standing there kind of frozen still, paralyzed with fear and confusion, but it's just him with no Sephiroth in sight. This is a rather short interaction between the two, as they often have been so far up to this point in Final Fantasy VII Remake. So once this is over, we make our way through the Sector 5 slums, and we get all the way to Aerith's house. We get inside and we find Elmira sitting at her table. Barrett, of course, frantically asking about Marlene. We find out Marlene is nice and safe. She's upstairs in the Aerith's bedroom, actually at this point, you know, sleeping, enjoying a good night's rest, thankfully nice and safe and in good health. And we get back downstairs and we start talking to Elmira. And here's where we get a little bit more background regarding Aerith and her association as an ancient. So we find out for sure that Elmira is not Aerith's real mom, like at all. As a matter of fact, what ended up happening is that I'm going to assume that during the during the Wutai War, Elmira's husband was deployed. He was either a soldier. He was a soldier. He was deployed, and she would go to the train station every single day to see if he had returned or not. During one of these trips to the train station, she ran into Aerith's mom, and a young Aerith kind of just laying there with, you know, Aerith's mom basically on the verge of death, with her final words to Elmira saying, please take Aerith somewhere safe. After which point she died right then and there, and you see poor little Aerith over her mom's dead body crying, of course, you know, because her mom just died, which is what typically happens when your parent dies in front of you, you cry. We also learned that Aerith and her mom had escaped from some sort of a Shinra facility. I'm going to assume, and it's been a very long time since I played the original, but I'm going to assume that this is from Shinra Tower, probably from Dr. Hojo's labs inside of the tower itself. If not, then I believe there is another facility that we encountered in the original way late into the game, but I could have those facts mixed up and totally wrong, because again, it's been a very long time, but they escaped from some sort of Shinra facility, and that's how they ended up here at the Sector 5 train station. Elmira goes on to tell the party that, you know, some stories about how Aerith has some unique abilities, and we now get confirmation here that Aerith does indeed have the ability to commune with the planet in the form of what happened with Elmira's husband. So one day...
Mommy, don't be sad.
That's what she said to me one day, out of the blue. So I asked her, what's wrong?
A man you really, really loved just died. His heart came a long way to say goodbye. But he couldn't stay because he had to return to the planet.
You know, of course, Elmira knew that she was referring to her husband, but didn't believe her until she got a letter a few days later stating that her husband had been killed in combat. And in this instance, now we know for sure that Aerith is already confirmed an ancient, but not only is she an ancient, she has the ability to commune with the planet itself, which now kind of lends in more into my theory that, you know, when we saw the game, when we started Final Fantasy VII Remake, Aerith's in that alley, she's got that bright green glow around her of, you know, we could assume to be the live stream. She was communing with the planet at that time and probably be informed of all of the events of the original game, because Aerith from the original game was projecting everything over to this timeline, yada, yada, yada. You get the drill. Anyways, and if that doesn't make any sense right now, maybe this is the first video in a series you just jumped into, I highly suggest that you go watch the first two, and it'll make a whole lot more sense once you watch the other two videos. We also find out that Shinra has been after Aerith this entire time, ever since she was a little girl and she had escaped the facility with her mom. But the catch is that, you know, they obviously want to use her and her powers for their own gain, but the only way that it's going to work is that Aerith has to voluntarily and willingly go with them, which is why they never just snatch her up and take her, because if they take her against her will, whatever it is that they need from her is not going to work. Now, let's go back to 7th Heaven's Bar when Aerith is trying to rescue Marlene. This isn't some sort of, oh my god, crazy conspiracy or anything like that, but just more of like clarification, okay? So she approaches the door, Sung's right there waiting for her. Obviously, they have to get out of there. The plate's about to come down. She has Marlene, so she says, hey, let's strike a deal. The deal is quite simple. The deal was that she would voluntarily go with Shinra in exchange for Shinra getting her out of there and dropping Marlene off over at her mom's house. That was the deal, just in case that needed to be clarified. Once this conversation wraps up, we make our way back to the Sector 7 slums because, of course, they want to go and try and help any survivors and see if anybody like Biggs or Wedge or Jesse or anyone else that, you know, resided in Sector 7 survived. We arrive at Sector 7. Sector 7 is completely destroyed. The 7th Heaven Bar is completely destroyed. It's just a completely terrible and terribly sad scene to see. And in the middle of that, we run into, of all things and of all people, we run into Wedge's cat. We follow Wedge's cat into a giant hole in the ground that leads to an underground Shinra testing facility. As we arrive there, behind some sort of a force field that looks like it's something straight out of Star Wars, you see Wedge's body right behind there, presumably now still alive. But unfortunately, ladies and gents, this is where this video is going to have to stop, because we will continue this part of the game on the next one. Thank you all so much for enjoying these couple of videos of mine here. I'm having a blast making them. We're very, very close to 1,000 subscribers in a relatively quick time frame. So I've got no one else to thank but you. So please, as I've done in the other videos, and as if you've done in the other videos, comment below. Let me know what you think. What are your theories so far? What do you think of my train of thought and where things are going with this so far? This one section here, not necessarily a boring section, but definitely not one with a whole lot of substance going on. And I think that we're going through a lull period in the game right now, because once we get out of this test site and we make our way to Shinra Tower, all shit hits the fan and it's going to be freaking awesome. So make sure y'all join me for the next one. Appreciate y'all. Y'all have a great night. Be good to yourselves. Be good to one another. Peace out.